Welcome. Hi, everybody. Is everybody here? Please say hello in the chat box. Welcome to our webinar. Hello, everybody. Can you all hear me? Hi. You are faster than I am. I was going to ask you where you are speaking from. We have Santos, we have Mexico City, Florianópolis, Campos. Very good. São José do Rio Preto, Diadema, Bahia. I love how cosmopolitan this webinar is. Everybody, welcome so much. Welcome. El Salvador, Belo Horizonte. I myself am speaking from Sorocaba. I am originally from Rio Grande do Sul, but I am speaking from Sorocaba, São Paulo. And I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar. My name is Cristina. I am an English teacher for Cultura Inglesa and also a helper within the e-learning department. And I'm here today to talk to all of you about learner autonomy in the virtual environment. I don't know about you, but those long titles always get my attention, but sometimes I get a little bit confused because we have all this beautiful name and we don't know exactly where it comes from and what is the purpose of it. So I have some questions for you. I'm going to ask you some questions. I would like you to first reflect upon it, okay? It is not necessary for you to write the answers, but think about it. Question number one I have for all of you. Have you started learning something new this year in 2020? Think a bit. And as you are thinking, also try to be a little more specific. Was it related to your professional or personal life? And how did you decide what to study and how to study, where to get the tools, where to have the classes from? Try to think a little bit about it. If you would like to share with us in the chat box, you can do so. Lots of people are writing. Yes, a Cambridge course, LTS. So many changes. Santana do Livramento. Okay, Japanese. That's awesome. Learning new languages is incredible. And there is, like Maria Inês wisely mentioned, there is a whole new world online. Studying piano, Eloisa. I love how varied your study areas are. So it is safe to say that although this webinar is aimed at teachers, I have something to tell you. You are a learner. First and foremost, you are a learner yourself. Learning French, learning about geopolitics. Oh my God, awesome. How to prepare classes using Google Classroom, so learning technology as well. Yes, Rita, teachers are learners. And now I have a second question for you. Let's do the same thing again. I would like you to reflect upon it. And if you would like to share, you can use the chat box. Question number 2. Did you decide what to do yourself? Or was it thrusted upon you? Did somebody else force you or told you to do that? Were you able to choose what to study? Or did you have to ask people for help when you were deciding? How was the process to get there? We were forced by the challenges, Rita. But when it comes to choosing, were you able to choose between one course or another? Or did a person tell you what to do? Alessandra chose it. Okay. Situation was important to determine what to learn. Okay, interesting. You've decided yourself, Shirley, to improve your teaching qualification. That is awesome. So overall, I can see that even though we felt the need because of the situation of this year, you have decided and you have chosen what you do, what you study. Sometimes it's something more related to your profession. Sometimes it is related to a hobby in order for you to have some kind of free time for yourself, learning time for yourself. So it is safe to say that you are also autonomous. We have covered 2 of the 4 words in our title. You are a learner and you are autonomous as well. When it comes to autonomy, as I was doing some research, I have found lots of different conceptions of it. The one I have decided to share with you is this one. Autonomy is a capacity, let it be for detachment, critical reflection, decision-making, and independent action. Take a look at the first line again. Autonomy is a capacity for detachment, critical reflection, decision-making, and independent action. It presupposes, but also entails, that the learner will develop a particular kind of psychological relation to the process and content of his or her learning. The capacity for autonomy will be displayed both in the way the learner learns and in the way he or she transfers what has been learned to wider contexts. When it comes to talking about autonomy, we usually think about autonomy is being able to do something by oneself. It is important for us to mention that autonomy is not a concept, a skill that you just grasp. Okay, so now I'm autonomous. I can ride a bike. It's not like riding a bike. It is a capacity in which we have to be in constant training of. And this capacity is going to enable us and help us to transfer skills that we have learned to other contexts. And that's why it is very interesting to see all of your answers here, because they somehow mirror your autonomous process as well. Even though some of you mentioned that you needed to work with, you needed to take into consideration the current situation we are in, you are able to make autonomous choices in regards to what you would like to learn. Rita, awesome. Autonomy has to be conquered with time and commitment. It is a matter of routine, and this is something we are going to discuss. Very good, everybody. And when it comes to autonomy, I would like to ask you about some can-dos. Usually when we think about our own learners, we think about what are the can-dos when it comes to the skills, when it comes to the systems, and what can autonomous learners do? Take a look again. They can continue learning efficiently outside the classroom once they are self-reliant. So learning does not only takes place in the classroom, but also outside of it. And they can transfer skills beyond the classroom and then become more resourceful and autonomous. This is from a very interesting article from Cambridge University written by Janet Hardy Gould. Just so you know, the slides will be made available for all of you, and the slides are full of hyperlinks in which you can study even more about autonomy and learn some tips and also some theory. Everybody who's joining us, welcome. I'm really happy everybody's here. Feel free to ask questions and post comments in the chat box. Remember that when we think about autonomous learners, we think about learners who are able to transfer these skills beyond the classroom. And then when I think about skills, what skills come to your mind? Can you type it in the chat box when I say transfer skills beyond the classroom? Lots of people are typing. I'm excited. Listening, speaking, reading, writing. You're such language teachers. Yes. Speaking a foreign language. Negotiation, Prix, very good. What else can you think of? We came to the obvious skills, but what if I told you there are other skills to be developed and transferred? Wagner, excellent. Critical thinking. Give me more. You can give me more. Solving problems. Yes. Give me more. Being citizens. Yes, George. Excellent. And then, as I was watching another webinar on autonomy, I came across these learning skills. They are divided. This was a webinar given by Samantha Lewis on encouraging learner autonomy. And not only do we have to work with the skills we already know when it comes to language learning, speaking, listening, reading, and writing, but also when we think about thinking and learning skills. And as you have wisely mentioned in the chat box, creativity, critical thinking, digital literacy, and learning to learn, and also developing social and emotional skills. Communication, collaboration, emotional development, and also social responsibilities. Yvonne is mentioning in the chat box, I believe that autonomy is a name for all people, for everybody who can develop their best on communication. I totally agree, and I can even go further, Yvonne, and say that autonomy is going to make us better citizens of the world as well. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Remember that when we think about transferring skills, we are not only transferring language-related skills, but also thinking, learning, social, and emotional ones. Sharing knowledge, excellent. And then as I was doing some research as well, I am a bookworm myself, and I came across this book by David Little called Learner Autonomy, and the author has made his entire book available online for free. I highly recommend you all take a look at this book because it connects learner autonomy and psychology and how we need to cater for the need until learners are fully autonomous. And in this case, there's a direct quote from him. It says that autonomy has two aspects. The first has to do with the unconscious agenda by which linguistic development proceeds. And the second has to do with the social freedom that the child enjoys, the child or the learner enjoys to interact with parents, siblings, relations, caregivers, and so on. Autonomy has two aspects. We have the unconscious agenda, which means I have to learn, I need to learn, there is this, people are telling me to do so. And the second is the connection that we have with other people in our social freedom as well. The capacity for self-learning and ability. Very good, Benedict. Thank you so much for your contributions. I'm really sorry if I can't read them all. I really wish. So, very interesting. This book is also made available on the slides you will be able to get later on. So, we have come across what a learner is, and we have all agreed on the fact that we are all learners. We have already discussed about autonomy, and that autonomy is not a skill to be conquered, but rather a skill to be practiced. And we have different degrees of autonomy for us to both learn and teach our own learners. So we have discussed half of the topic. Okay, and now I would like you to try and think about the second half. As you are signed up for the webinar, we had learner autonomy, and then there is a second part. What is the second part of the webinar? Can you use the chat? Prix, use the acronym. Yes. Can you write the full words? We have VLE. What's VLE? Congratulations, Prix. Yes, virtual learning environment. So this is the second part, and I would like to ask you a question. As I told you, this is much more of a chat in which we are going to build knowledge together. When we think about, especially this year, can you give me examples of virtual learning environment platforms that you have been using or that you know of? Can you please type it in the chat box for us to share together? Moodle, Padlet, Teams, Zoom, Classroom from Google, WebEx, Teams. Give me more. Socrative, Meet, Wordwall, Google Meet, Wix, Kahoot. Oh my God, yes, Skype. So most of you, I love that. Bamboozle, Classroom, Quizzes, Pixton. Excellent. So you have mentioned these 3 platforms. They are Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet. However, I have some news. They are not virtual learning environments per se, because they were not created for that reason. They are actually video conferencing tools. When Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet were created, it was not their first intent to make those virtual learning platforms. They were focused on video conferencing tools for meetings, for classes as well, and so on. And Anna Ruth was very wise when she mentioned here in the chat, we had to use it because of emergent situations to teach online. And this is my point. Have we all agreed that Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet are video conferencing tools and technically not virtual learning environment platforms? Yes, Vivian. Yes, Briggs. Agreed. Okay. I have some questions for you, and I would like you to be really honest. Okay? Especially if you are making use, if you are using one of these 3 platforms or other ones that you have mentioned in the chat, okay? Question number 1. Are these platforms virtual? Okay, sure. I guess. I mean, can we use them without a device and internet? I don't think so. Okay. Second question, tricky, I know, but bear with me, we're going to get somewhere. Second question, does learning take place here in your cases when you make use of those things, of those platforms? Definitely it does. We hope so, yes. We really hope learning does take place. Okay. So they are virtual platforms. They are learning platforms. It is safe to say that 2 and 2 are 4. 2 plus 2 is 4. So those platforms are virtual learning environments. Not per se, but because this year we as teachers have resignified them. So they are tools that we can use for those environments as well. Okay? However, the main definition of a virtual learning environment and the definition per se that we are going to use here in this webinar is that the virtual learning environment is a system for delivering learning materials to study students via web. And then David has mentioned here that Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and Google Meet, they are actually tools. And you are more than right, David. However, they are also platforms in which learning takes place. So somehow they are learning platforms. However, materials are not delivered as thoroughly and as focused as they are here on Google Classroom and on these other ones. Can you identify the logos? You have mentioned, I think, all of them at the beginning of the webinar. Moodle, Classroom, yes. And the other 2, Blackboard. Yes. There is one more, Edmodo. Excellent. I would like to ask you, everybody, which ones have you been using? And have you been using another environment that is not here on the slide? All of them at different times. Never use Edmodo is really interesting, Prix. I think you're going to have a blast if you give it a chance. Classroom, the classic. Zoom, okay. Google Classroom. Mentimeter, yes. Mentimeter is a very interesting tool as well. Very good, everybody. So let's keep in mind that we have two different categories of tools and environments that we use for teaching nowadays. The first one, we have those tools that are used for video conferencing, Zoom, Google Meet, Microsoft Team, and we have the ones that are called virtual learning environments, in which we have a moment for delivering materials, building up conversations and connections as well. As you can see, this quote was also it came from the Oxford University Press website on the online resource centers. I think it's really interesting for you to check this website out once it's over. So we've covered learning, we've covered autonomy, we've covered virtual environments. And now it's time for us to put everything together. We've got learner autonomy in the virtual environment. How do these things are going to get together? Before I move on, I would like to first recommend a webinar by Luciana Sena, also given in this platform here for Disal, called Teaching Adults in the 21st Century. You are going to get lots of practical tips and also some psychological theory on how important it is to pay attention to andragogy and how teaching adults is important as well. And the second thing I would like to ask you, this website, Rita, is actually on Disal's YouTube website. It has already been streamed. So you can just go there, click. You can also click on this link once I made the slides available and watch it. Okay? And the second thing is, I would like to ask you, what made you sign up for this webinar in specific? What do you want to know when it comes to learner autonomy in the virtual environment? What are your questions? What did you expect from it? We have reached half of the webinar. What are your questions? What do you think we are going to discuss from now on, since we have covered the three main terms? A miracle. Strategies, ideas, okay. How to help students be more proactive and creative. Daniela, you mentioned needing your teenagers to have more autonomy. Autonomy to do what more specifically? Can you elaborate on that? What could we motivate our students to learn more inside virtual classes? So it's about motivation. Okay. Most of the time, cameras are off. This is the struggle, isn't it? How can we promote learner autonomy? But then, Wagner, I'm going to ask you, learner autonomy in what sense? We want students to be autonomous in regards to what? Being more engaged in online learning. Self-motivated, this is really good. How to engage, how to make them more committed. Okay, so I personally have started teaching using online tools, using Zoom, as of April of this year. So I have had some different groups, and I would like to share with you my experience and what was successful and what was not when it comes to learning autonomy together. Please feel free to share your own experiences as well. We are here to build it together. And when it comes to having students autonomous, helping them feel more engaged and being motivated to take part in those classes, I have found out that there are three key aspects when it comes to the teacher. The first aspect is, for a teacher, it is paramount that we build rapport with our students. Then again, this is something we are already aware of, especially in our face-to-face lessons. We always talk about building rapport, but something else that is important, it is extremely it is a part of our learning, and for us to be teachers, to be vulnerable as well. Once we are vulnerable and we are able to open up with our students, they are going to be vulnerable back. So building this rapport little by little. Remember, just like autonomy is not a wall for us to cross. It is a movement. It is an ongoing movement. And building rapport and being vulnerable is also a movement that we need to make. The second pillar we have here is ask meaningful questions to our learners. When it comes to meaningful questions is how are we going to actually bond instead of just asking for instructions? Okay, everybody, are you going to speak? Are you going to write? Okay, speak, teacher. Are you going to read? Okay, of course, instruction questions are really important. However, if students are able to find out that every time you ask them a question, you as a teacher already know the answer, they are only going to give you what they think you want, not necessarily what they do. And here, it is very important for you to be open. And this has to do with being vulnerable. Because if you are able to ask the correct questions, ask meaningful questions, so that students somehow are unprepared and therefore need to put themselves in a vulnerable position as well, they will be opening up to you a bit more. Little by little, it's not a magic world. It's not asking the first question and then somehow everything happens. We need to build it. Open questions. Yes, interesting perspective. Okay. And it is important for you to be there. And we talk a lot in the ELT world how important active listening is and build rapport is. But how are we going to do that? Just like, oh, when it comes to build rapport, we have to talk about our likes and dislikes. Yes. But when you listen from a student what they like, how are we going to incorporate that into your lesson? It can be something really small. But then when it comes up, your student is going to smile, even if their cameras are off. But they're going to see, Teacher Chris has thought about me when she was written there. Not only yes or no questions. Yes. Yes. The third pillar I would like to share with you here is to praise and foster autonomy. I am taking the CELTA this semester as well. And in one of my input sessions, we were talking about giving feedback and how important it is for us to give feedback when it comes to accuracy, of course, but it is really important for us to give positive feedback when it comes to praising our students. We are so used to saying, okay, it's not you is, it's you are. But then again, there are very good samples of language or the way a student gets out of his or her comfort zone that we need to praise those students. And when that happens, they are going to feel confident enough to practice even more. And that really means the world for students because they are going to look at you first and foremost as a human being. And second, as a teacher who knows their name and who knows their tastes, who knows what they like, what they don't like, what they're good at, what they're not. It makes a big difference from them. Shirley has mentioned, sometimes I don't ask meaningful questions because I'm afraid of their struggling answering them and being embarrassed. This is something really interesting, Shirley. I would like to open a parenthesis here. And I would like to use the last part of what you mentioned and bring it to discussion. We can't read our students online. Do you all struggle with that? Do you feel it has become more difficult to read our students? If yes, why do you think that happens? If no, why do you think that doesn't happen? Shirley, you are more than right. Shirley has mentioned I can read their eyes in class. And facial expression is paramount when we are building rapport. That's why I struggled a lot with my teenager groups because I had one student who had her camera open and all of them had their cameras off. So when I was proposing a task, it was really difficult to see if they enjoyed it or not. They are uncomfortable with the system. And Layla, somehow so are we. Isn't it right? We are all uncomfortable with this year in general as teachers. Everything turned upside down overnight. And then we were presented with new tools, and we were presented with, okay, you have to deliver the same thing you did, but everything changed. How can we deliver the same when everything else is different? So I'm going to ask a question back. Are you showing your vulnerability to your students so that they can be vulnerable back to you? Or are you hiding how vulnerable you are because you as a teacher need to be the stepping stone? You need to be the force of nature that is going to drive them towards knowledge. And therefore they feel ashamed because they feel they are not allowed to be vulnerable. Families are desperate. Students are shy too. Very interesting. Very interesting. So remember that we need to ask them for help concerning the online tools. Yes. And it is important for you to show, like, I don't know how to work with those tools. You can help me. And then you as a teacher can help students. Students can help you. But remember to be honest with them. The more honest you are, the more honest they will be back from you. They know it. Yes. Yes. And they feel really important, especially teenagers, if they can actually help you with something. Like, oh, my sound's not working. And then they start turning their microphones on, say, teacher, click here, teacher, do that. So, and then afterward, you can have a laugh about it. And then you can use that. And this is the moment I would like you to think about. Use this moment to foster the next stages of your lesson. This is interesting. I would like to share with you, using the virtual learning environment from last semester at Cultura Inglesa, which is the school I teach. I have come, my students have helped me during the semester, and I want to show you some strategies and some tips that I had with my learners in order to foster their autonomy. In this case, more specifically, I'll be talking about the virtual learning environments per se. So from now on, I'm going to be talking about Google Classroom more specifically because it's the tool I have been using, but feel free to share your own experiences and also to think about how this can be transformed into other virtual environment or even the online conferencing tools we have discussed. The first one, this was May the 4th. I am a geek. I love Star Wars. And then in my group, I have posted, Happy Star Wars Day. Since we were discussing films and reviews, I found the official Star Wars website with a lot of interesting information on the franchise. Do you like Star Wars? What's your favorite film and character? So I had the official Star Wars website, and I had a BuzzFeed quiz in which Star Wars character are you? May the Force be with you. Yes, we have geeks here as well. I would like you to pay attention to the first sentence Vinicius has written on the comment. Why do you think I have chosen this specific example to talk about autonomy? He feels comfortable about it. Exactly. This is the first thing. What else? I know him, exactly. But then again, I didn't post. This wasn't a post for Vinicius because I know he likes Star Wars. This was connected to the class. We were talking about films and reviews. It was the topic of the conversation. But then again, this was the first time Vinicius has written a comment on Google Classroom. Prior to that, he hadn't done anything. He had delivered all of his assignments. He participates in class. Okay, but he hadn't done that before. I helped him to practice his English in a topic he was excited about and that he felt he could contribute on. The way that we write our own posts are also the way we write is also very important when it comes to fostering autonomy. Because if you have like this very long text, you show that you know everything and so on, they will feel they have nothing to contribute on. So in that case, what do we have here? We have motivation. I found a topic in which he would feel comfortable about it and he would add to the conversation. What happened here? I posted this on Monday. Our classes were on Tuesday. When they all entered Zoom, I asked them, everybody, did you see it? Did you check it? And then everybody, he was the only one who commented, but everybody else had taken the quiz. And we spent 30 minutes discussing personality traits by using the Star Wars character quiz. Sometimes being autonomous does not mean you have to show everything to your teacher. But remember to be asking so that they are going to feel comfortable enough to share that this has been happening. Engagement, motivation, and self-esteem. Yes. And after that, Vinicius participated throughout the semester much more actively. And every now and then he would feel a bit quiet. I would tell him like, oh, everybody, do you think I need to play some Star Wars music so that we can join it? And everybody would have a laugh. And he would go like, teacher, okay, I'm here, sorry. There are small drops, small moments of connection that we can have. One of the main issues I have and I was faced is the fact that but it takes a long time to get to know all of them. And I have to prepare a whole activity based on what they like. Not necessarily. Have a notepad near you, take notes. Teacher, I have to tell you, I watched the new Now United documentary. Okay, Now United. The other one says, teacher, have you seen the new horror movie on Netflix? And I was like, okay, I hate horror movies, but I go like, really? Tell me more. Oh, there's this story, this, and that. Okay, take notes. Next class, bring it back somehow. And they will be much more, they will be paying more attention and they will be really happy when that happens because they will feel they are important and they are part of the class. This is my first example. Let me go with another one. I'm going to show it here and I would like to ask you, this is much shorter. What do you think happened here? This is André. André posted on Google Classroom. It wasn't a reply to a post of mine. He posted it. A link to a Quizlet set of cards that he had designed. By the way, if you are not familiar with Quizlet, I highly recommend you use it. It's one of my favorite tools for flashcards and vocabulary as well. Yes, Marines. Cool. Exactly. But I actually have something to talk about it before that. There is a moment which is, how did I get a student get excited enough to feel comfortable enough to post on Google Classroom, which is an activity that is usually teacher-centered. When we think about Blackboard, when we think about Classroom, Moodle, and so on, we have that image of teacher posts, I reply, and that's it. I got a student posted by himself. I was very surprised with that as well because it was the first time a student had posted something on Google Classroom. But why that happened? The class before, I used Quizlet with another topic. We had an activity with the flashcards. Quizlet is awesome, and if you open YouTube, there are lots of tutorials on how to use it. It's very user-friendly. You will love it, and it's for free. You can purchase a premium account and so on. But the focus is, I used it. And when they were working, they were asking me questions about it, especially André. And André asked me, is this a tool for teachers only? I was like, no, everybody can do it. And at the end of the class, I came back. André asked me that for the whole group. And I highly encourage you to get vocabulary organized using Quizlet. And he was like, okay, teacher. And that was it. He asked me that question. On Wednesday or Thursday, this was a Saturday class, he would post it. He didn't say anything. He didn't talk to me prior, before posting that, and then he did that. He posted the link for the unit he had been studying. And what is paramount when it comes to us as teachers foster autonomy? Praising. The set was incredible. I couldn't know, I forgot to put the link for you, but he used pictures as well. It was beautiful. So the set is incredible. And then don't praise just, oh, it's good, oh, it's great, oh, it's amazing. Praise specific points. I loved how you used the pictures and GIFs to help memorize new words. And this caters for autonomy. And this is something I would like you to take with you by the time this webinar is over. When you praise students, don't just say, very good, let's move on. Very good and let's move on. They are not going to take anything with them. But if you look at it and say, okay, I love the picture you chose. I love that you use this word. I love that sometimes they would participate. A student would say something and he would stay a little longer on Zoom. I wouldn't close the room. And I say, Andrea, do you have any questions? No. Okay, I just would like to say, I love that in this part, you help this student. Show that you are paying attention to your own students. And this is really, really important. The more you praise them, of course, praise them honestly. Okay, don't just praise them because they need to be praised, because they see us and they see if we are not telling the truth. This is really good. Let me check it here. Yes, he found a way to help himself with vocabulary learning. Excellent. So he did that by himself, and not only did he do that, he also helped other students do that as well, because he posted his work and then other students started using it. And other students gave him positive feedback, and he created other 3 sets. And something else that André told me later on, that he purchased the premium version of Quizlet. I myself don't have the premium version of Quizlet. And he did do it because he felt it was interesting for him. If we are not honest, they will notice. Exactly. Okay, Alex here mentions he also had a student who started using Quizlet after a class. I recall that she decided to be in charge of creating sets and sets for the whole group. How awesome is that? And then you can share different topics for each student. So this student is going to be responsible for Quizlet. And then you say like, okay, does anybody else want to be responsible for writing a summary of the class for the group? So you transfer it to your students and they feel comfortable with that. Remember, you don't just thrust things upon them, but you help them build the confidence enough to be autonomous. This is really interesting. Very good. Next one that I have here for you. This was a bit interesting because this came from a bot that posted on Google Classroom to talk about a webinar that Cultura Inglesa was offering back then on how to take notes. This is technically not related to what they were learning in English, but the post was in English. And then they decided to start sharing their own suggestions. So we had André here, and Miriam has also shared her own suggestions. And as you can see, they recognized what has been mentioned, and they have suggested their own. So it is important for us, as Prix wisely mentioned in the chat, to have validation and acknowledgement. As you can see, I didn't write as big an answer as Miriam and André did, but I was there to validate. Like, I love the sticky notes, but my preference is Google Keep. But because Google Keep is the love of my life, I love it. And then Miriam came back a few days later on and said, Cris, I didn't know Google Keep. I've just known it after watching the webinar. So this was posted before the webinar. The student went there and came back to talk about her experience. So each one will be working according to their interest and skills. Yes. And then later on, when our session, our synchronous session was up, I asked them, like, everybody, did you watch? And lots of other students said, teacher, I did. So you validate what you can see in the learning environment, but remember that you have to validate the ones that don't feel comfortable enough to write. Each person has his or her strengths and weaknesses as well. Maria Inês is mentioning here, I always tell my students that everybody has a gift. I ask them, what's your gift? And then they are supposed to contribute in the learning process using their gifts. Oh my God, this is adorable, Maria Inês. I would even have a twist for young learners and teenagers that I would substitute the word gift for GIF or GIF. So they would post the GIFs. This would make like a very fun activity. They would go with lots of different GIFs. You could have a board and show how talented your class is, you know? So I think we have something to work together there. And then you can always refer back to that. But Maria Inês, that's it. What's your gift? Sometimes students are too shy and they don't feel like they have gifts, especially when it comes to language acquisition. They feel they are in this position of, I need to learn, shower me with what you know. But they have so much to offer. And sometimes you have to tell them little by little how important it is for them to show their gifts in order to learn a new language. Very good. One more tip in here. This group was reading Moby Dick. Of course, a reader version. This was an upper intermediate level. And out of nowhere, since day one, my students know that I'm obsessed with musicals. Musicals are awesome. I love them. Every now and then I make reference to the Phantom of the Opera or to Les Miserables and so on. And then this student would post again on Google Classroom that he found out that there was a musical on Moby Dick. And then he came up and he was like, when we talked about the readers, like, teacher, can I talk about the music? Can I talk about the music? I was like, okay, of course. He had prepared the slides to talk about the musical that he had watched. And he was like, can I share my screen? I was like, what? It took a little while. I had to cut a bit of what I had planned beforehand. Yes. Was it worth it? Totally. Because after André did that, and he did it out of nowhere, everybody was surprised, and so was I. Round of applause for André. Yes. After that happened, I talked to some students from the same group. One of them is a doctor, a medical student, and the other one was a professional runner. And I asked them if they could also prepare some extra presentations. So I rescheduled everything I had to teach, so I would have a full class for them to talk about their likes and dislikes based on what they had learned. So my student, who is a doctor, they are adults. Leila, for those who are asking, like, where do your students come from? They're all students from Sorocaba. They're my babies. But this is the thing. They were all adults and young adults. I think there was one or there were two teenagers there, but usually adults. I got Rafa. Rafa is a medicine student, and I asked her, Rafa, do you feel comfortable enough to talk about mental health? And she was like, yes, of course, I would love to do that. And then I asked her to choose two other students to help her with that. So they met during the break. I would put them in a breakout room. They asked me for that. And also an outside classroom. And the other students, I had a student who was a professional runner, and he would prepare a class on the benefits of exercise, especially during the quarantine, during the pandemic. And I had never seen them more engaged. Everything that happened, all of the topics we discussed, they would say, oh, but I have learned this, I have learned that. And these students made other students interested as well. Why am I talking about this? Sometimes it feels like, oh, teacher, Chris, this is like, these students don't exist. This is a dream class. This will never happen to my students. My students don't even open their cameras. I can't even hear them speaking. This is never going to happen. Yes, this will, but it takes time. The best way of learning is teaching. Yes, Shirley, you hit my point. They love doing that as well. And then we come back to the three pillars that we have discussed. First pillar, build rapport with your students. But don't just build rapport in the first class when you ask, what do you do? I'm a student. What do you like? I like watching Netflix. I don't get anything from their passions there. So build rapport, take thorough notes. We are here in this webinar that are 111 participants, and I am sure that whenever I mention your name, you go like, oh, yes. And then even if we're not paying attention, if I say your name, you just go like, what's happening? You feel seen. Make your students do that little by little. Remember, we have to build this little by little. Don't just put your students into the spotlight, especially when it comes to teenagers. But sometimes when you are phrasing an exercise, change the name to the name of a character they are talking about. When we think about role playing, oh, you are in the set of Stranger Things. Oh, you are the members of Now United. Get to know what they like. And little by little, you're going to make this connection. I was really surprised when I had a teenager group and they had to do a project on the bands and singers they would like. There was this student, Rafael. Rafael is 12 years old. His favorite singer is Alcione. Oh my gosh. And he was brave enough to open up and say, like, my favorite singer is Alcione, when they were all like, my favorite band is Kiss, my favorite band is Metallica, it's Now United. So the fact that he felt comfortable enough to share that with the group, I won my day back then. My students and I have an Among Us group. Yes, I've been learning, but it's too difficult for me. So you see, we do that. Among Us, we agreed to play. We had to talk in English. And then you can stretch language from that. Because you have the suspect, you have the tasks you have to do, you have to think about daily routine, you have to think about the verb conjugation per se. There are lots of things we can get from it. So remember to do that. Second, ask meaningful questions. Listen to their claims. Listen to their contributions. Sometimes they are not actively voicing them out, but it's the way they behave. So if you feel a student contributes a bit, okay, how can I make that student contribute a bit more? How am I going to talk about it? You know, so it's really interesting to listen to their claims. Anna Ruth has mentioned that she has 82 university students in each subject. Yes, Anna. So building rapport with each single student is going to be tough. Is that impossible? I don't think so. But at the same time, I see how hard it can be. What you can do is using the virtual learning environment to build writing communities, discussing about those topics. There are other suggestions. If you feel you have any other suggestions to give to Anna Ruth, feel more than welcome to do that. I unfortunately am not on my place to talk about it because I have 20-something students in my classes. But I see you, Anna, and I know how challenging that can be. But remember that every contribution is important. And if you build rapport with a single student, it's already a good start for them to open themselves up a little bit more. And you ask them to work in groups. Excellent. And the last part, let's go back to praising and fostering autonomy. Bring the discussion from the virtual learning environment to the online platform. Have this connection. Don't have two separate classrooms. Oh, we have the things that happen on Moodle, on Google Classroom, on Blackboard, and we have the synchronous sessions. No, make a link. When you are in your synchronous section, make reference to that. When you are in your virtual learning environment, make reference there as well. This is also really important. And if you are able to cater for those small moments, you are going to see that they are going to return much more from you because they will be more curious, they will be more participative and more engaged as well. Okay? Everybody, let's work together. Let's build this community. If you want the slides, you can either scan the code that's here, or you can also type in your browser window bit.ly/L autonomy. So L as in learner, autonomy. I'm going to give you some time for you to do that. And I have something else. Bear with me, it is not over yet. I don't know if you have noticed, but there is an Easter egg in this presentation. There is a secret message that I have spread throughout the slides. And as autonomous learners that I know you are, you will be curious enough to try and find out what the secret message is. So if you do find it, you can post it on Instagram if you do have an Instagram profile, or you can send me by email so that we can have this chat as well. And you can tag me, Bordinhão, and you can also tag Faculdade Cultura Inglesa. You can also send me an email if you would like to continue this conversation, ask for questions, and share your own experiences. Okay, everybody, this is the QR code again. I would like to thank you so much. I would like to thank Disal for opening this spot for our conversation. I hope it helped you enlighten your ideas and apply them to your own groups. Okay, that's it. Thank you so much.